Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Powell, for the generosity of your time. We're at the witching hour, but appreciate your endurance. And with respect to my friends, the gentlelady's line of questioning, would a recession that would potentially result from a massive tax increase, a $4 trillion tax increase, would a recession help the debt and deficit picture?
No. Tax receipts would go down and all that.
Yeah, so I think this sky is falling scenario about the one big beautiful bill, we have to put into context, and I'm not asking you, Chairman Powell, to comment on this, but this is my editorial response to my colleague. A massive $4.5 trillion tax increase that would put us into a recession is not a recipe for fiscal discipline. Chairman Powell, let me switch gears to tariffs. Governor Waller argued in a speech earlier this month that tariffs might result in just a one-time price increase as opposed to increasing long-term inflation expectations, especially since this Congress has not pumped massive spending into the economy as Democrats did under President Biden. On this issue of a one-time price increase versus inflation expectations, do you generally agree with Governor Waller's analysis?
So I do agree that basically, if things are a one-time increase, then you don't respond to them. That's the whole idea, is there's a shock to prices. It could be an oil shock, could be a tariff shock. Generally speaking, you don't respond if you are highly confident that it will just be a one-time shock. I think the current situation, though, is a complicated one, and I think a number of my colleagues and I feel like it's a decision we need to take with some care. And the reason is because we're not at price stability. In 2018 and 19, when the president's tariffs were put into place, not only did we not raise rates, we cut rates 3 times that year because the tariffs were so much smaller. These tariffs are many times larger, and they do raise kind of more concern. In 2019, we hadn't had high inflation in 30 years. Now we're only a few years reduced away from high inflation. So we think that they may well prove to be a one-time thing, but in the meantime, it's a decision we want to approach with some care.
I think we've made a lot of progress towards getting closer to that 2% goal. Does the Fed take into account the disinflationary fiscal policies like supply-side tax cuts, deregulation, and more energy production that could be a counterweight to whatever one-time price increase that might materialize as a result of tariffs?
So we look at aggregate inflation, not any particular kind, and I'm very gratified at the performance of services inflation, which has come down now. That was the very sticky inflation. So I think overall the inflation picture is actually pretty positive.
Chairman Powell, we're looking forward to this rulemaking later this week addressing Treasury market liquidity. Can you talk about how banks are constrained from holding U.S. Treasuries and other low-risk assets on their balance sheet as a result of these restrictive leverage ratios?
Yes, when banks are bound by the leverage ratio, when that's the binding capital constraint, then that's going to make sort of low-risk, low-return assets, something you don't want to hold. And so lots of fairly low-risk intermediation, including Treasury market intermediation, gets taxed to the point with capital requirements that you just see less of it. So I've always thought that it would be better if we had a leverage ratio that it was a backstop rather than the binding thing, and that's what this proposal is going to do.
Well, let me preemptively thank you and Vice Chair of Supervision Bowman for working on SLR reform to accommodate more bank holdings of treasuries to stabilize our treasury markets. Finally, I'm pleased to see that the Fed joined its interagency counterparts and announced that you no longer plan to consider reputational risk in your examination process. Senator Scott and I introduced the FIRM Act to stop the weaponization of the supervision process, to stop the targeting of politically unfashionable groups. Our bill requires regulators to focus on the true risks as opposed to political factors. What was the Federal Reserve's thought process in implementing this common sense reform?
That it's common sense, and I think this is an area where we learned over the last couple of years that there really was a problem here. The reports were louder and louder and more troubling. So we you know, we just thought, let's take this off the table. It may have been
Gentleman's time has
unintentional on the part
expired.
of banks that just there was so much, it was just such a
Gentleman's time has expired.
fraught issue that banks turned away people with which they didn't intend to discriminate. That's what the banks.
Thank you for helping
Chair
to
will
depoliticize the
announce
banking